All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. So this is our keynote presentation. So it's an honor to welcome Sheng Wang as our keynote speaker for the for our annual showcase today here at lunch. So Sheng Wang is an assistant, not yet, not associate. An assistant professor in the Allen School. His work focuses on large-scale models for biomedicine. He did his undergrad in computer science at Peking University, did his PhD at UIUC, and then did his postdoc at Stanford. A lot of his papers have been well cited, and a lot of the papers have also been published in well-known journals like Science and Nature and The Lancet. Many of the models that he's going to be talking about and others that he's built have been used across industry as well. So without any further ado, I'm going to have Sheng take it over.
Thank you. Great. Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm so glad to be here today. I'm going to talk about generative AI for multimodal medicine. I'm going to focus on medical challenges, medical problems that traditionally cannot be addressed by traditional AI methods, but now can be solved by generative AI. So first of all, I would like to give a very brief overview of the 4 different paradigms in AI for medicine, or 4 different stages of AI in medicine. The first one is very well known, deep learning. But the problem with deep learning is that we often need to use one model for a specific task. Then this is very time consuming, and also we cannot share the data across different tasks. And then in 2022, people have this very exciting paradigm called foundation model, where we use one model to solve different tasks. ChatGPT is the most famous foundation model, and this kind of foundation model can efficiently leverage data across different tasks. And since last year, people start to explore the idea of multimodal foundation model. Here in the input space, we can also consider different kinds of images. Like if we want to do cancer research, cancer diagnosis, we can consider both MRI, CT, and pathology images. And just this year, and also we are working on this kind of topic this summer, people start to explore multi-agent. So here we have multiple foundation models. One could be a pathology foundation model, one could be a MRI foundation model, one could be a genomics foundation model. They work together, collaborate together to solve a very challenging medical case. This is like many doctors. Some are radiologists, some are pathologists, some are oncologists. They sit together to discuss a very challenging medical case. So today I'm going to focus on multimodal foundation model. And if you join us next year, we might be able to share more about a multi-agent, okay? So why should we do multimodal foundation model? Because medicine is inherently multimodal. There are lots of complicated diseases like diabetes, hypertension, cancer, Alzheimer's, even COVID. They are complex diseases that we will see signal all over the body. It's not about a certain organ. We will see signal everywhere. For example, diabetes, we can see signal from teeth, from heart, from brain. And then we need a multimodal model which take images everywhere, like a heart using echocardiogram. From brain, we use an MR image. We need to consider all kinds of images. And these images are not just the same type of images. They could be very different images. Some are 3D, some are 2D, some are very large, some are very small. So we need to use different kinds of image encoder to model them. Then we need a multimodal framework. So today I'm going to talk about 3 of recent work in my lab. The first one is a foundation model for pathology image. The second one is a foundation model for 3D medical image, and we apply it to the retina image. Finally, I'm going to talk about a multimodal foundation model, which integrates 9 different medical images. And then we can see what we can do with such a powerful multimodal model. So first of all, I would like to talk about the pathology foundation model. Pathology images is actually the most challenging one for existing AI model to handle. The reason is that pathology images are too large. So this is a pathology image, okay? It's very small, you can put it on your finger, but if you want to see the detailed cell structure, the organization, we need to do a 20 or 40 magnification, then this image becomes 100,000 by 100,000 pixels. So what does this mean? If I just simply print this image in a certain resolution, like we can see, like 300, 600 dpi, just this small image can cover the entire tennis court. And in comparison, this is image like a traditional deep learning model handle. Okay, cat, dog, animal classification, they are very small images, 256 by 256 pixels. So if you print them, they are as large as a tennis ball. So here's the mismatch. existing AI model, GPU architecture, all the software, they are developed to handle such small image like a tennis ball. But if we want to model pathology image, it will be as large as a tennis court. So this is a very challenging problem. It has blocked the field of pathology for many years. But we found that the challenge, the solution here are very similar to the underlying problem behind ChatGPT. They seem to be two very different domains, right? ChatGPT is question answering, conversation, text data. Pathology, like image, cancer, is very different domain. But the underlying challenge and the solution is very similar. So ChatGPT can handle very long document sentences. We can give it a very long PDF and then ask ChatGPT to summarize it. It can give us a very concise summarization of a very long document. And then we leverage the similar ability to model large pathology image by convert a very large pathology image, 100,000 by 100,000 pixels, to a long sentence. And in this long sentence, the basic element is not a word or a character. The basic element is a small image here, which can handle perfectly by existing deep learning model. So we use existing deep learning model to handle small images. Then we use this kind of long context modeling ability by ChatGPT and the generative AI to summarize this entire sentence. In this way, you can have a very good overview of the status of this patient based on the pathology image. So based on this idea, this high-level idea, we developed the first foundation model for whole slide pathology. Whole slide meaning that we can model the entire 100,000 by 100,000 pixel image. And this paper is published in Nature a few months ago. It's a collaboration among Microsoft Research, Providence Genomics, and the University of Washington. And the most exciting thing is that our model now got, on average, 200,000 downloads per month from Hugging Face. And most of those downloads are from countries or areas that traditionally do not have very strong training of pathologists. So people all over the world can use our model for free now. So let's see what we did and what we learned from this model. The first thing we learned is that one model can fit all. First of all, we trained just one model using 30,000 patients, 140,000 their pathology images from 28 hospitals and 15 cancer types. Just one model covered all the data. This is very different from traditional AI for cancer research, where we think cancer is very heterogeneous, so we need one model for lung cancer, one model for bladder cancer, we need multiple models. But here, we just trained one model, and we found that this model actually did very well on 25 of the 26 tasks. We obtained the best performance. This is another example of generative AI, which learning from lots of data, it can actually generalize to many different tasks. And then let's see what specific 26 tasks we did. The first set of tasks is cancer subtyping. For example, I know this patient has ovarian cancer. I have this image. Now I want to classify this patient into a specific cancer subtype. And our model can do it automatically and can give a very good accuracy, most of the time above 18%. And for some cancer type, we can reach almost 19% accuracy. And this is a very important indicator for expected survival or selection of therapy. And then another task we did is that given a pathology image, our model can predict which specific gene this patient might have mutation. This is very important for selecting target therapy. And among 18,000 genes, we can achieve the best performance on 17 genes. So with the same model, we can do well on so many different tasks. But those are some important tasks, but our ultimate goal is actually to predict treatment. So given a pathology image, I want to know whether I should recommend this patient to do radiotherapy or go to a clinical trial or do target therapy. That's our ultimate goal. And even within target therapy, I want to know which drug we should use on this patient. We found that this is very challenging. Our model actually at the beginning cannot do well, and most of our existing AI model also cannot do well, because lots of information missing here, like patient insurance, like whether this patient is willing to take a certain kind of treatment. And then we use this idea of chain of thought to address this problem. So chain of thought is a very creative idea in generative AI. The idea is that for a very complicated task, we can decompose them into small subtasks, and then we ask the AI model to solve those subtasks individually, and finally, we can address the challenging task. Here is an example, of using generative AI to solve a math question. It seems to be pretty simple to human, but it's actually a very hard problem for LLM. And LLM cannot do it correctly, but if we give them some hint, like how to do it step by step, The same model, same question, now the same model, same question, now the model can answer this question correctly. So this is a high-level idea of chain of thought. The question is, how can we apply chain of thought to medicine? This has never been done before. So this is our idea. We use clinical guideline as the chain to instruct LLM to do the treatment prediction. Treatment is very challenging to predict, but our LLM can predict those sub-steps like subtypes, biomarker pretty accurately. And then we leverage this clinical guideline. This is published by NCCN. The best cancer experts, oncologists, they sit together, have a discussion, and then come up with this guideline. Like for a given patient, we first predict subtype. Based on this subtype, we go to this category. We predict biomarker. Based on this biomarker, we go to that treatment. So we use this guideline together with our LLM. Expert will suggest and post this guideline. Each individual step, we use LLM to do prediction. By following this guideline, finally, we can predict treatment much more accurately. This is like a human-AI collaboration because doctors, they are always worried that AI will replace them. But we come up with this kind of collaboration solution, right? Experts will still derive the high-level guideline, and the individual step will be done by the AI model. And I think in the future, AI model could be like a clinical lab test every doctor can order. It's like a blood test, a CT scan, an MRI exam. The doctor can order an AI test to do a specific task, and then the doctor will make a decision based on the AI output. So this is the first model I want to talk about, a pathology foundation model. The next thing I want to talk about is a foundation model for 3D medical imaging. 3D medical imaging is actually very, very different in general domain and medicine because in general domain, most of computer vision models are developed on ImageNet, on like internet image. They are inherently 2D. But in medicine, there are lots of 3D images, like MRI, CT. Here, I want to show an example to tell you how challenging it is to model 3D images. This is a patient, a real patient in UW Medicine. This patient has age-related macular degeneration. It's a retinal disease. And then we often use something called OCT, which can help us see the retina of this patient. And this OCT is a 3D image. There are more than 60 slices. So if we see some of the slices, especially those in the middle that doctors often prefer to see first, we didn't find any the macular degeneration pattern. But only at some slides that are much lower, we actually find the pattern. So the disease pattern is often in a specific slide, very tiny pattern. We need to have a model that can understand this entire 3D structure. Based on this intuition, we developed the first 3D OCT foundation model, which is trained from 26,000 patients from UW Medicine. And this model performed the best on 29 tasks, including 8 different retinal diseases and many systematic diseases like hypertension, diabetes. This is about prediction accuracy. Okay? Now, I want to show you our model can also provide interpretation. So we can tell the doctor which region they should focus on, and then the doctor can take a closer look, and those regions often has disease pattern. This is the eye of that patient just shown with the macular degeneration, and there are multiple slices, slice 18, 20, 26, from bottom to the top, many slices. This is the visualization of 2D model. We can see that the 2D model actually did not provide a very accurate interpretation. Sometimes the interpretations are not reasonable. Like here, they think this part is important, but this actually falls out of the retina region. And this is the interpretation of our 3D model. You can see that most of the times, we can highlight a region that is within the retina. And another important thing is that the region we found are very consistent between nearby slides. Slides 22 and 26, they are very close to each other, and then we found similar region between 22 and 26. So this means that our model can comprehensively understand the entire 3D structure to make a diagnosis. And we also did some cross-center generalization. The model is trained from UW Medicine, patient in UW Medicine, 26,000 patients. And then we test this model on patients from other four medical centers, including Johns Hopkins, Minnesota, Duke, and NYU. We all achieve good results compared to 2D model. So 3D model, by looking at the entire volume, can actually be better than 2D model in this kind of generalization to new patients. And this is another generalization which is very interesting and pretty unique to this kind of retina study. This is the true image of the same patient, same eye, but screened by two different machines, two different devices. Okay, same patient, same eye. And you can see that they look pretty different, like with the angle, the shape, but this is the same patient. These are two images from the same patient, same eye. So if one hospital, we train the model using the same first device and test it on another hospital using a second device, the performance is traditionally very bad. But our 3D model, which trained on the images in the first device from the first hospital and tested on image on the second device, actually outperformed the 2D model, which trained and test both on the second device. This is because the 3D model will consider the entire structure and focus on those kind of disease area, so it will be it's pretty robust to those kind of shape or the angle difference. And finally, our model can also do systematic disease prediction, like diabetes, hypertension, using the retina image only. We can do this diabetes, hypertension, and we see pretty good example. So here, I would like to show one case study of a real patient in Utah Medicine. This patient has diabetes. And in the first visit, the 2D model, by looking at each slice individually, didn't detect this patient has diabetes. So we didn't see any signal using 2D model. But in the first visit, our 3D model successfully detected diabetes by only looking at this kind of very tiny signal in two of the slices. We successfully predict that this patient has diabetes. And after 1 year follow-up, now the 2D model can also detect diabetes because there are lots of signal in many slices. But the 3D model can actually do it 1 year earlier. So this is the second work I want to talk about, and this kind of 3D idea can actually generalize to other modalities like MRI and CT, and we are now working on those kind of similar 3D imaging. The last thing I would like to talk about is a multi-modality model that integrates 9 different image modalities. In our pathology foundation model and OCT foundation model, we also explore this kind of multi-modality idea, but I will say they are very limited. We only consider 2 modalities there, okay? Pathology, we integrate clinical report and pathology image. And they are very redundant information, so it's very easy to model because report is a description of the image. In our OCT, the retina work, we also integrate 2 different views, but they are still about the same eye. What we want to do is integrate image all over the human body, everything, and then have one model that consider all those kind of very diverse, very different image. This is a very challenging problem even for general domain machine learning because CLIP, the state-of-the-art multi-modal model in general machine learning, is limited to 2 modalities. Then how can we have a model that can integrate 9 different image modalities? Our method is inspired by a language. It's a constructed language called Esperanto. Esperanto is a constructed language. So the idea is that if everyone can speak Esperanto, we do not need any translator between any 2 persons, right? We can just, everyone translate their own language to Esperanto and then communicate using Esperanto. We want to find such Esperanto in medical imaging domain. Then we can build one foundation model for each medical image, one for CT, one for MRI, and then project everything to this Esperanto. So the question is, what should be the Esperanto in medical image? Our idea, which is published in this paper called BioMedParse, we use human language as the Esperanto for integrating different medical images. They are very different image modalities, CT, MRI, ultrasound, pathology, but there's one common thing. Every medical image has a clinical report. So CT has CT report, MRI has MRI report, pathology has pathology report. Then we can project every image to the text space using their report, the image report association. So we can project 7 million images from 9 different image modalities all to the text space. And then in this text space, 2 images will be similar or close to each other, not because they are the same modality, like both pathology or CT, but because they are describing similar patients, like one CT image and the pathology image could be close to each other because they are talking about similar cancer patient. So based on this, we have lots of exciting quantitative evaluation. The paper is accepted by Nature Methods earlier this month, and there are lots of details there. But I would like to show you what we actually deliver to the doctors. So we are pursuing this idea, a high-level idea of something called GitHub Free. We hope the doctors can use our tools in a web browser, not go through like Hugging Face and download model, writing their own code for application. This is our system, which is available on Azure Cloud now. Give a chest CT image, you can type anything and talk to this model. For example, here, I just search for lung nodule in this chest CT, and then our model will immediately label, segment, and color the nodule and tell you that this is a nodule we found from chest CT. Everything is automatic. You don't need to have any medical knowledge to understand CT. Just ask for whether there's a chest CT here. And sometimes this might be an image we cannot even understand. I want to find the cancer cell types, but I don't know the specific vocabulary. How should I describe a cancer cell type? I can simply type get all cell types, and then this will be the output of our model. The model will detect 3 different kinds of cell types. Some are cancer cell types, some are normal cell types, color them, label them, and tell you that this is what we found from this pathology image. And in this way, we don't even need to read or understand the image. Everyone can analyze their medical data very quickly, okay, using our model. And this model can be generalized to 9 different image modalities: MRI, pathology, ultrasound, almost everything. And then this is another example. This is a pathology annotation, a very large pathology image. And you can imagine the pathologists need to spend lots of time label, color, and classify each cell. There are about 500 different cells. They need to do it manually, one by one. And our model can do it in 0.2 seconds with 19% accuracy, very consistent, very quickly. And then we can know where is the cancer cell, whether there's lots of cancer cells. Everything will be done automatically. So this is what we have done as a research paper. Now we are building towards a more exciting vision by collecting more data from UW Medicine across different organs and different diseases. And then we want to build one foundation model using the idea here to integrate all of them for more systematic disease, like diabetes, hypertension. I really need to acknowledge all of our collaborators. They are all physicians, doctors within UW Medicine. I call it data racing in comparison to fund racing. We do not raise fund too much these days because we try to get as many data as possible to help us build this foundation model, one model that covers all medical images. So this is what I want to talk about the third paradigm, the main focus of today, multimodal. I want to use 2 slides to further talk about what we are working on now. We don't have a manuscript yet, but we have seen some exciting results in multi-agent. So what we did is a simulation of something called molecular tumor board, where there's a very rare cancer case, and then lots of oncologists, 3 oncologists, a few pathologists, a few radiologists, they sit together, discuss, and then figure out a solution for this patient. Now, we are trying to show that by adding a few AI models, one model responsible for pathology analysis, one model responsible for CT analysis, by having a few AI models there to chat, discuss with those doctors, it can make this process, this meeting more efficiently and help us find the treatment more accurately. Because AI model is very good at analyze the image, and if a doctor has a question, and then they can immediately ask our AI model to give response. And based on this, we are building something like Microsoft 365. It's a full package of everything for daily business, right? There's calendar, email, office, everything. We want to deliver the same package of multi-agent AI model, which will cover everything, like pathologist, CT, genomics, everything here. And all those models will be guided by a very large language model like ChatGPT to control and guide how should we use all those models to support the cancer research. So this is what we are working on now, and we will have a manuscript on this topic very soon. So this is about the 4th paradigm, okay? Next, I actually would like to just use 2 more slides to talk about the future work. So if we think about this, what might be the 5th paradigm we will see in the next year or the next 5 years? To answer this question, I would like to first summarize what we learned from generative AI for medicine. There are 3 lessons we learned. First of all, medical foundation models are very accurate. They almost achieve the state of art everywhere, like a medical question answering, image analysis, or multimodality analysis. We see so many state of art results on different kinds of benchmarks. Secondly, which is actually less well known, existing medical foundation models are very heterogeneous. This is an example of 3 existing best pathology foundation models. One of us is our model. And here you can see that I show the source of the training data. Those 3 models, they are comparable, all very good, and some model might be good on this task, but might be worse on another task. But very surprising thing is that they are trained on very different patients. There's almost no overlap. Our model is trained on patients from Washington State, Oregon, and some of them are from California. Another model published by Memory Stone Kettering mainly trained on patients from New York. And the third model is trained from Harvard, so they are mainly patients from Boston. They are all very good models, but they are trained from very different data sources. So there's a possibility to ensemble them to create a much better model. And the third lesson we learned is more striking. Compared to ChatGPT or OpenAI, I would say that OpenAI or ChatGPT, they might have already used like 18% or more than 18% of all the existing human text data. But in medicine, the story is totally different. Even the largest foundation model like we built only use less than 0.001% of existing medical data. Very small amount of data we use. It's already the state of the art. Here I have some statistics, okay? In US, there's every year 18 million CTs generated. But even the largest foundation model is trained using 100,000 CT over 10 years, so on average 10,000 per year. It's already the state of the art. In pathology, there are 100 million slides generated every year. The largest model actually on average only takes 17,000 per year. So very, very few data used. This is the key difference between GenAI for medicine and GenAI for general domain. There are still potential here. Then I think the fifth paradigm, which we are also pursuing, but it's maybe too ambitious at this point. If we can build one model using medical data all over the world, this is actually not infeasible because there are so many medical centers, right? Some in US, some in Asia, some in Europe. Every center have their own data collection. They can build their own foundation model using their local data. And then we do not require anyone to share the data. They only need to share the model, like update the model to Hugging Face. The model weights is made available like what we did for our model. We only need to share the model weights, and the model weights is often very small, like a few hundred megabytes a general cluster can handle. And then we collect thousands of such models and train one mixture of experts model to learn from all of them. And this will be a model that everyone can use and will use data from every patient in the world. So if we think about this, I think this is pretty exciting. Then what we need from an AI perspective, the first thing we need is more accessible foundation model techniques. So every hospital, every doctors, they may not be like very strong AI researcher like OpenAI can hire. Every medical center can build their own foundation model using some GPUs, limited GPUs, and using very standardized pipeline and easy to use code base. I think this is actually something true now. All those kind of medical centers can build their own foundation models. Secondly, we need novel mixture of experts model. Like what OpenAI did, they used mixture of experts to integrate a few language models, then they come up with ChatGPT. We want similar model, but this time we want to integrate thousands of diverse models from thousands of different medical centers, and then we can have one such model. And finally, we also hope the model to be pretty small. We see lots of such progress in industry now, like Microsoft is delivering a very small model that can run on a cell phone. We also run one small model because we will integrate thousands of such models, then the model cannot be too large, and then everyone can easily use those kind of small models, even in the scale of thousands of models. So this is all I want to talk today. I want to acknowledge all of my collaborators again, and finally also acknowledge all of my students and the collaborators for supporting us for this kind of research. Thank you so much. I'm happy to take questions.
All right. Okay, so we have a few minutes for questions. So there's a mic kind of towards the front here. If you have a question, it'd be great if folks can start queuing up if you have questions. So, so while people are thinking about their questions, so I have one for you. So it was really interesting to kind of hear how folks are using the data from Hugging Face to kind of create their own off-label diagnostic tools. Can you talk a little bit about how those are working and just kind of, how do they apply some of those in some of these resource-constrained environments?
So I just want to clarify which model from Hugging Face or
just in general, you mentioned that this is starting to become a thing that is being done right now in the community.
Yeah. So there are actually all the existing medical foundation models are available in Hugging Face now. Because we don't share the data, we only share the model weights. So those models are made available on Hugging Face. Although one thing which I didn't talk about today, but we are also doing research in this perspective, is the safety issue. So people now think that if we just release the model, it's unlikely people will be able to recover the data. Okay, the data is sensitive data, medical data, a CT, MRI. If we only release the model weights, it will unlikely that someone will recover the data. But there's also a possibility in the future that there could be some hacking techniques to recover data. So those models are Hugging Face, but before we uploading more, sharing more models there, I think a very important topic is to make sure that we can overcome the privacy safety issue here. And then we can actually use it for some kind of disease prediction from Hugging Face model.
Is this on? Really impressive work and ambitious. Thank you. Gabe Jones, CEO of Proprio, and I'm going to ask a very biased question. How do you connect the diagnosis piece and all the multi-model approach with the actual treatment and therapy? So connecting that with outcomes and the particular treatments that are chosen for these patients. Thank you.
Yeah, so diagnosis and treatment, so we actually, so for our current framework, we are following clinical guidelines to go treatment. This clinical guideline will be based on diagnosis, like the subtyping, biomarker, specific disease, and then the guideline, which is determined by doctors and approved by FDA, will tell us what drugs or what kind of treatment we can use. So this is how we do it. We actually do not predict the treatment or drug directly. We still prefer to predict diagnosis from AI model and let the doctors or the guideline to tell us what treatment to use. I think this can minimize the risk here in terms of side effect or other things.
I think let's give Sheng one more round of applause here from.
Thank you.